The wind was brutal that October evening, cutting through Tommy Blake's worn jacket like it wasn't even there. He hunched his shoulders against the cold and kept walking through the abandoned Sterling industrial complex. Most kids from school would never come through here, especially not alone at dusk. But Tommy wasn't like most kids. He preferred the quiet, the solitude. It gave him time to think, to exist without the constant reminder that he didn't quite fit in anywhere. His backpack felt heavier than usual, stuffed with his laptop and the circuit boards he'd been working on for weeks. The robotics club had let out late, and the other members had offered him a ride home like they always did. Tommy had declined like he always did. Small talk exhausted him. Pretending to care about football scores and weekend parties drained whatever energy he had left after a full day of classes. Walking alone was easier, even if it meant cutting through this creepy maze of rusted metal and broken concrete. He was mentally running through the code for his latest project when he heard it. A sound that made him stop dead in his tracks. It was faint, almost lost in the whistle of wind through empty buildings, but it was there. Something between a whimper and something else, something that made every instinct in his body scream danger. Tommy pushed his glasses up his nose, a nervous habit he'd never been able to break. "Hello." His voice came out higher than he wanted, cracking on the second syllable. "Great." Even when no one was around to hear him, he still sounded like an idiot. The sound came again. Weaker this time. More desperate. Against every survival instinct he possessed, Tommy turned toward the noise. His phone was already in his hand, flashlight on, cutting through the gathering darkness. He picked his way carefully through the debris field behind a collapsed section of warehouse wall. Twisted rebar jutted from concrete like broken bones. Weeds had reclaimed most of the area, nature slowly taking back what humans had abandoned. What Tommy found in that forgotten corner of the industrial complex would change his life forever. Would change everything, really. But in that moment all he could do was stare. The creature was roughly the size of a large dog, maybe a German shepherd, but that's where any comparison to Earth animals ended completely. Its body was covered in something that wasn't quite fur, wasn't quite anything Tommy had words for. The material shimmered with an otherworldly silver-blue light that pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat made visible. The light moved across the creature's body in waves, mesmerizing and impossible. Tommy's scientific mind, the same mind that drove his teachers crazy with constant questions and his classmates away with long explanations nobody asked for, went into overdrive. This wasn't like anything in any biology textbook. The proportions were wrong. The body structure was wrong. Everything about this creature screamed other, alien, impossible. And it was chained. A thick collar wrapped around the creature's neck, made of metal that looked like nothing Tommy had ever seen. It pulsed with an angry red light that seemed to beat in counterpoint to the creature's own blue glow. The collar was connected to a heavy chain, bolted directly into the cracked concrete foundation. Dark stains matted the creature's shimmering fur. Blood. Definitely blood, though it was darker than it should be, almost black in the fading light. The creature's breathing was wrong too. Shallow, gasping, the kind of breathing that said time was running out. Tommy's first instinct was to run. Every horror movie he'd ever watched, every survival documentary he'd binged on lazy Sundays, told him to get as far away as possible. This was dangerous. This was unknown. This was not his problem. But then the creature's eyes opened and met his. Tommy forgot how to breathe. Those eyes held something that made his stomach flip and his world tilt sideways. He'd watched documentaries about animal intelligence. He'd read articles about consciousness and cognition, about the thin line between instinct and thought. But this was different. This was something else entirely. Those eyes weren't just aware. They were intelligent. Deeply, unmistakably intelligent. They looked at Tommy with understanding, with fear, with desperate hope. They looked at him like a person drowning looks at a life preserver. Like someone who knows they're dying and has just been offered one last chance at survival. "Oh my God," Tommy whispered, dropping to his knees about 6 feet away from the creature. His voice shook. "What are you?" The creature watched him, those impossibly aware eyes tracking his every movement. Then something happened that made Tommy's scientific worldview shatter and reassemble itself in the space of a heartbeat. The creature's fur suddenly blazed with light. Not random flickering. Not distressed thrashing. The light moved in patterns. Deliberate, sequential, mathematical patterns that repeated with perfect precision. Tommy's hands trembled as he pulled out his phone and started recording. The patterns continued, each sequence building on the last, growing more complex. His brain, that same brain that isolated him from normal teenage life, suddenly kicked into a higher gear than he'd ever experienced. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. He counted aloud, his voice barely a whisper. You're showing me prime numbers. You're using mathematics. Universal constants. You're trying to establish communication. The creature's light pulsed once, bright and unmistakable. A response. An affirmation. Yes. Tommy sat back hard on the concrete, his legs suddenly unable to support his weight. His mind raced through implications, through impossibilities that were suddenly horrifyingly possible. This wasn't an animal caught in a trap. This wasn't some undiscovered species that wandered into the wrong place at the wrong time. You're a person, Tommy breathed, the words feeling inadequate even as he spoke them. You're not an animal. You're someone. You're intelligent and aware, and someone chained you here to die. The creature's light flickered, the patterns shifting to something that Tommy's gut interpreted as profound sadness. Exhaustion. The creature's head lowered back to the ground, the effort of communication clearly draining what little strength remained. Tommy looked at the collar, then at the chain, then at the massive bolt driven deep into the foundation. His mind cycled through scenarios, each more impossible than the last. Aliens were real. They were real, and one of them was dying 10 feet away from him in an abandoned warehouse in suburban Pennsylvania. Someone had done this deliberately. Someone had chained a thinking, feeling being here and left them to suffer and die alone. The wrongness of it hit Tommy like a physical blow. Whatever this creature was, wherever it came from, it didn't deserve this. Nobody deserved this. Okay, Tommy said, his voice steadier than he felt. Okay, I'm going to help you. I don't know how yet, but I'm not leaving you here. I promise. The creature's eyes opened again, and Tommy saw something painfully familiar reflected back at him. Hope mixed with the bone-deep expectation of disappointment. The look of someone who'd learned not to expect help, who'd been let down so many times that trust felt dangerous. Tommy knew that look. He saw it in his own mirror on bad days. Tommy's garage had become his entire world over the past 3 days. What used to be a boring storage space for his dad's tools and his mom's holiday decorations was now something straight out of a science fiction movie. Cardboard boxes were stacked against the walls to create a makeshift shelter. His old sleeping bag lay in the corner, surrounded by bowls of water and plates with food scraps. Extension cords snaked across the floor, powering his laptop, a space heater, and the small lamp he'd rigged up for working at night. And in the middle of it all was Lux. Tommy had named the creature on the second day. The light patterns, the way they communicated through pure luminescence, it just felt right. When he'd first said the name out loud, Lux's entire body had lit up like a Christmas tree. Tommy had taken that as approval. His parents had no idea. Linda Blake worked double shifts at the hospital, often leaving before dawn and returning after Tommy was supposedly asleep. Robert Blake managed the hardware store downtown and kept similarly long hours. They were good people, hardworking people, but they were tired people. They trusted Tommy to take care of himself. That trust was currently being stretched to its absolute limit. Tommy sat cross-legged on the cold concrete floor, his laptop balanced precariously on his knees. It was almost midnight and he should have been sleeping, but sleep felt impossible when he was on the verge of something incredible. 3 days of obsessive work, of recording every light pattern, of building algorithms and testing theories, and he was finally making real progress. Lux lay nearby, close enough that Tommy could feel the warmth radiating from the creature's body. Over the past 72 hours, Tommy had learned so much through trial and error. Lux ate meat, but not just any meat. Raw chicken made Lux sick within hours, the creature's body rejecting it violently. Beef was better but still caused problems. Fish, though, especially raw salmon, that worked perfectly. Tommy had burned through his savings buying it from the grocery store, making up stories about his mom's new diet when the checkout lady gave him weird looks. The wounds on Lux's body were healing with impossible speed. The gashes that had looked life-threatening on that first night were now barely visible, just faint lines in the shimmering fur. Whatever Lux's species was, they recovered from injuries far faster than humans could. Okay, Tommy muttered, typing commands into his homemade translation program. Let's see what we've got today. His program was crude, built from coding knowledge he'd picked up from YouTube tutorials and online forums. It analyzed the light patterns frame by frame, looking for repetitions and mathematical relationships. Over 3 days, Tommy had recorded hundreds of sequences. His bedroom looked like a conspiracy theorist's lair, covered in printouts and diagrams, lines connecting different patterns like he was trying to crack an enemy code. In a way he was. Lux shifted closer, making a sound that was somewhere between a sigh and a purr. Tommy had learned to recognize it as contentment. The creature settled against his side, and Tommy absent-mindedly reached out to rest his hand on Lux's head. The fur felt warm, almost hot, and tingled against his skin like touching a live wire. Not painful, just electric, alive in a way that normal fur shouldn't be. "I think I've got it," Tommy said, his voice tight with excitement. "Look at this." His screen filled with translated sequences. Tommy's heart hammered as he read the words forming from the light patterns. He'd gotten fragments before, single words or simple concepts, but this was different. This was complete thoughts, full sentences, a story. "Ship," he read aloud, his voice shaking. "Family. Diplomatic mission. Earth sector." He paused, scrolling down. "Attacked. Ambush. Traitors. Hunters." Tommy's stomach twisted. He looked at Lux, and the creature's light patterns shifted to something slow and pulsing, waves of color that didn't need translation. "Grief. Pure raw grief." "They killed your family," Tommy said quietly. It wasn't a question. Lux's light dimmed, the colors bleeding into darker shades of blue and purple. The creature pressed closer against Tommy, seeking comfort in the only warmth available. Tommy felt tears burning in his eyes. He wrapped his arm around Lux, careful of the still healing wounds. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." More patterns flickered across Lux's body. Tommy's program struggled to keep up, the translation appearing in fragments on his screen. But the story emerged piece by piece, and it was worse than Tommy had imagined. Lux was young. 7 cycles, whatever that meant, but young by any measure. The Valari, Lux's species, reached full intelligence almost immediately after birth. They were born aware, born thinking, born with the capacity to understand their world from day one. Lux had been traveling with family on a diplomatic vessel, part of some kind of peace mission to the Earth sector of space. Tommy learned that Earth wasn't supposed to be discovered yet. There was some kind of treaty system, ancient protocols that kept young civilizations hidden from the rest of the galaxy. Protected, like children who weren't ready for the harsh realities of the universe. The Valari were guardians of this system, peacekeepers who made sure aggressive species didn't find vulnerable worlds. But someone had broken the rules. Traffickers, Lux's light patterns spelled out. Humans and others working together. They ambushed the diplomatic vessel, wanting its technology, wanting to capture exotic beings they could sell to wealthy collectors across the galaxy. The Valari had fought back. The battle had been brutal and chaotic. In the confusion, Lux had been separated from the pack. The traffickers had caught the young Valari, chained them up as proof that they'd eliminated all witnesses. They were supposed to come back and dispose of the body, erase all evidence of what they'd done. But something had interrupted them, forced them to leave Lux behind temporarily. That's when Tommy had found them. "They're still out there," Tommy said, feeling cold despite the space heater. "The people who did this. They're still operating." Lux's light pulsed in confirmation. Tommy stared at the collar that still circled Lux's neck. He tried everything to remove it over the past 3 days. Every tool in his dad's extensive collection, every trick he could think of. Nothing worked. The metal was like nothing he'd ever encountered, stronger than steel but lighter, and it seemed to repair any damage he managed to inflict on it. Worse, every time he got close to the locking mechanism, the red light pulsed faster, almost like a warning. "That thing is a tracker, isn't it?" Tommy asked, though he already knew the answer. Lux's patterns confirmed it, but there was more. The translation came through slowly, each word appearing on Tommy's screen like a death sentence. "Tracker. Yes. Also kill switch. If removed wrong, explosion. Kill me. Kill you. Destroy evidence." Tommy's blood ran cold. "So we can't just cut it off." "No. Need advanced technology. Need knowledge. Human equivalent of Valari engineering." Tommy leaned back against the garage wall, his mind racing. He was 16 years old. He was good with computers, decent at building robots, but this was beyond him. This was technology that shouldn't exist on Earth, that required expertise he didn't have. He needed help. Real help from someone who actually knew what they were doing. But who could he trust? If these traffickers had human accomplices, if they had the resources and connections to attack an alien diplomatic vessel, then they probably had reach into government agencies, law enforcement, maybe even the military. Then Tommy thought of someone. Ms. Rebecca Hall, his robotics club advisor. She was ex-military, had worked with explosive disposal robots in war zones before retiring to teach high school. She was smart, capable, and more importantly, she'd always treated Tommy like an actual person instead of a weird kid who needed to be fixed. She'd listened to his ideas, encouraged his projects, never made him feel small. If anyone could help, it would be her. "I know someone," Tommy said to Lux. "She used to work with bombs and robots. If anyone can figure out that collar, it's her." But I'll have to tell her about you. Show her everything. Lux's light patterns shifted, flickering between different colors. Uncertainty. Fear. But then they settled into something warmer, more trusting. Your choice. Your world. Trust you. Tommy picked up his phone, staring at Ms. Hall's contact information. His thumb hovered over the call button. Once he made this call, there was no going back. He'd be dragging someone else into this nightmare, putting her at risk. But he couldn't do this alone anymore. The caller was too dangerous, the stakes too high. He pressed call. The phone rang 3 times before Ms. Hall answered, her voice thick with sleep. Tommy? It's almost 1 in the morning. Are you okay? Ms. Hall, I need your help with something, Tommy said. And you're not going to believe what I'm about to tell you. Actually, you're probably going to think I've lost my mind. But I need you to trust me and come to my house. Please. There was a long pause. Then, give me 20 minutes. Rebecca Hall's basement workshop looked like someone had combined a mad scientist's laboratory with a military bunker. Work tables lined every wall, covered in circuit boards, soldering equipment, computer monitors, and devices Tommy couldn't even begin to name. In the corner sat what looked like a disassembled robot, its mechanical guts spread out like a patient mid-surgery. The air smelled like metal, coffee, and the particular scent of electronics that had been running too long. Tommy had expected Rebecca to freak out when she first saw Lux. Instead, she'd stood in his garage doorway for a solid 30 seconds, completely silent, just staring. Then she'd said, "Get in my truck. Both of you. We're going somewhere more secure." No questions about whether Tommy was crazy. No demands for explanations. Just immediate, practical action. That had been 2 days ago. Now they were deep into what Rebecca called crisis mode, and Tommy was starting to understand why his teacher had seemed so calm in the face of an alien life form. Rebecca had spent 12 years in war zones, had dealt with life-and-death situations on a daily basis. An injured alien and a killer collar were just another problem to solve. Lux lay on a modified examination table that Rebecca had rigged up, breathing slowly while she studied the collar through a microscopic camera connected to her laptop. The young Valari had been incredibly patient, lying still for hours while Rebecca poked and prodded at the device locked around their neck. "This is absolutely insane," Rebecca muttered, her eyes glued to the screen. "The engineering is decades beyond anything I've ever seen. Look at these nanocircuits. They're smaller than anything our best manufacturers can produce. And the power source, whatever it is, it's completely self-contained. No battery, no fuel cell, nothing I recognize." Tommy leaned over her shoulder, watching the magnified image of the collar's interior mechanisms. Even blown up hundreds of times, it looked impossibly complex, like someone had crammed an entire computer system into something the size of a penny. "Can you disarm it?" Tommy asked. He'd been asking the same question every few hours, and every time Rebecca's answer was slightly different, slightly more hopeful. "Maybe," she said, which was better than the "probably not" from yesterday. "The detonation mechanism follows logic, at least. There's a tamper detection system here and another backup system here. If I can isolate the power source and create a bypass circuit before the tamper system registers what I'm doing, we might have a shot. But Tommy, if I mess this up even slightly, we'll have maybe 2 seconds before this thing explodes. And based on the energy readings I'm getting, the explosion would level this entire building." Tommy swallowed hard. "No pressure then." "None at all," Rebecca said with a grim smile. Lux's fur suddenly pulsed with urgent patterns. Tommy had spent enough time with the Valari to recognize alarm when he saw it. "What's wrong?" he asked. Tommy's translation program, now running on 3 different laptops simultaneously for redundancy, decoded the light patterns into words on the screen. "Tracker signal. Still active. They will find us. So, maybe already tracking. 3 days since escape. They will be desperate. Dangerous." Rebecca stopped working and looked at Tommy. "These people who did this to Lux, tell me what you know about them." Tommy pulled up his phone, showing her the research he'd compiled over sleepless nights. "From what Lux has told me, they're professional traffickers. They don't just deal in alien life forms. They move anything illegal and expensive. Weapons, technology, rare artifacts. They have a network that spans multiple planets, apparently. And they've got connections here on Earth. High-level connections. Government officials, military contractors, people with enough power to make inconvenient questions disappear. And they attacked an alien diplomatic vessel," Rebecca said flatly. "Killed everyone except Lux," Tommy confirmed. "They needed proof they'd eliminated all witnesses. That's why they chained Lux up instead of killing them immediately. They were planning to come back, dispose of the body properly, Make sure there was no evidence left behind. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she said, "We need to go to the authorities." "Which authorities?" Tommy challenged. "The local police? The FBI? The military? Which agency can we trust when we don't know who's working for these people? And what do we tell them anyway? Hey, aliens are real, we've got one in your basement, and by the way, there's a criminal organization that's been trafficking across the galaxy?" They'll think we're insane. Or worse, they'll take Lux away, lock them in some government facility, treat them like a specimen instead of a person. "So what's your alternative?" Rebecca asked. "We can't hide forever." Before Tommy could answer, Lux's fur flared bright red. The alarm color. The young Valari stood up on the examination table, every muscle in their body tense. "Vehicle. Outside. Slowing down. Scanning equipment. Energy signature. They found us." Rebecca moved immediately, years of military training taking over. She killed all the lights in the basement with a single switch, plunging them into darkness except for Lux's glow. "Tommy, take Lux to the storage room in the back. There's a false wall behind the old filing cabinets. Get behind it and don't make a sound. If you hear gunfire, there's an emergency exit that leads to the storm drain system. Maps are in the red folder on the shelf." "What about you?" Tommy asked, already moving toward Lux. "I'm going to buy you time," Rebecca said, her voice cold and professional in a way Tommy had never heard before. "Now move." Tommy helped Lux off the table, and they moved quickly through the darkened basement. The storage room was cluttered with boxes of old teaching materials, broken equipment, and random junk accumulated over years. Tommy found the filing cabinets Rebecca had mentioned and squeezed behind them, pulling Lux close. There was barely enough room for both of them, and Tommy had to control his breathing to keep quiet. Above them he heard footsteps. Heavy boots on hardwood floors. Multiple people moving through Rebecca's house with purpose. Then Rebecca's voice, calm and controlled. "Gentlemen, this is private property. I'm going to need you to leave." A man's voice answered, smooth and professional, the kind of voice that belonged in boardrooms and press conferences. "Ms. Hall, my name is Agent Williams. We're with Homeland Security. We need to ask you some questions about one of your students, Tommy Blake." "Tommy? What about him?" "We have reason to believe he may have encountered sensitive government property. Possibly dangerous biological material. For national security reasons, we need to search your property immediately. Do you have a warrant?" Pause. "This is a matter of national security, ma'am. We don't need a warrant." Rebecca's laugh was sharp and humorless. "I spent 12 years in the Army, Agent Williams. I know exactly what you need and don't need. That's not how this works. Come back with proper paperwork or get out of my house." The smooth voice hardened. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way, Ms. Hall." In the storage room, Tommy felt Lux tense beside him. The young Valari's fur began glowing brighter, patterns forming that Tommy recognized as preparation for a fight. Without the translation program, he couldn't understand the exact message, but he didn't need to. Lux was ready to defend them. Tommy grabbed Lux gently, shaking his head. He pointed at his ears, then at the ceiling, trying to communicate that sound would give them away. Lux seemed to understand, the glow dimming slightly, but the Valari remained coiled and ready. Above, Tommy heard drawers being opened, furniture being moved. They were searching without permission, and Rebecca's protests were being ignored. These weren't real federal agents. Real agents would have followed protocol, would have brought warrants and backup. These were the traffickers using fake credentials to gain entry. Rebecca's voice came again, sharper now. "That's far enough. I've already triggered a silent alarm. The real police, the ones with actual badges and jurisdiction, will be here in 5 minutes. You gentlemen should probably leave before you have to explain your unauthorized search to people who actually follow the law." Another long pause. Tommy could hear whispered conversations, people conferring in low voices. Then the smooth voice again. "We'll be back, Ms. Hall. With proper documentation. And next time, we'll bring enough people to search every inch of this property. Tell Mr. Blake we're very eager to speak with him. Tell him that what he's protecting is extremely dangerous, and keeping it will only end badly for everyone involved." Footsteps retreated. A door slammed. The rumble of multiple engines starting up, then fading into the distance. Tommy counted to 100 before emerging from the storage room. Rebecca stood in the middle of her trashed workshop, her phone in her hand, her expression furious. "They weren't Homeland Security," she said flatly. "I know. And they'll be back. Probably tonight. With more people and less pretense of legality. They know you're connected to me now. They'll watch this place, watch your house, watch anywhere you might go. So what do we do? Rebecca looked at Lux, then at Tommy. Her expression shifted from anger to determination. I have a friend who owes me a favor. Jack Martinez. He runs a fabrication shop about 40 miles outside the city. Industrial equipment, isolated location, defensible. We can work there without neighbors or easy access. It'll buy us time. Can we trust him? With my life. Jack and I served together in Iraq. I pulled him out of a vehicle after an IED hit. He's been trying to repay that debt for years. This qualifies. Lux's fur pulsed with a question pattern. Rebecca pulled out her phone and showed the Valaria map, pointing to Jack's location. Lux studied it, then their light shifted to something that looked like cautious approval. Okay, Tommy said. How do we get there without them following us? Rebecca smiled, and there was something dangerous in it. Let me worry about that. Jack Martinez's fabrication shop looked more like a fortress than a business. The main building was 3 stories of reinforced concrete and steel, surrounded by 40 acres of dense Pennsylvania woodland. Equipment yards stretched out in every direction, filled with massive machinery that cast strange shadows in the afternoon light. Storage sheds dotted the property like guard towers. The whole place had an industrial, unwelcoming feel that Tommy found oddly comforting. If you were going to hide from dangerous criminals, this was the place to do it. Jack himself was not what Tommy had expected. He'd imagined someone lean and intense, but Jack was built like a bear, standing well over 6 feet with a thick beard and arms covered in faded military tattoos. When Rebecca had pulled up with Tommy and Lux in the back of her covered truck, Jack had taken one long look at the young Valari and said, "Well, that's something you don't see every day." Then he'd helped them unload their equipment without asking a single question. That had been 3 days ago. Now, 72 hours into what Jack called lockdown protocol, Tommy was starting to understand just how serious their situation had become. He stood in the second-floor control room, staring at the wall of security monitors. Each screen showed a different angle of the property, and on 6 of those screens, Tommy could see vehicles. Black SUVs, unmarked vans, even a couple of trucks that looked like they belonged to utility companies but definitely didn't. They were parked at the tree line, maintaining a perimeter around the entire property, just watching and waiting. They showed up yesterday morning, Jack said from behind him, cleaning a hunting rifle with practiced efficiency. Quiet at first. Just 1 vehicle. Then 2. Now 6 that I can count, probably more I can't. They're smart enough to stay off my property, but they're not hiding either. They want us to know they're there. Why haven't they attacked? Tommy asked. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. Because this place wasn't built for making pretty decorations, Jack replied with a slight smile. I designed it after I came back from Iraq. Had some problems with industrial espionage, competitors trying to steal designs. So I went a little overboard with security. Motion sensors every 50 feet. Reinforced doors that could stop a small explosive. Windows that don't break easy. The whole place is basically a bunker that happens to make machine parts. Rebecca was at another monitor studying thermal imaging of the perimeter. She'd barely slept since they arrived, running on coffee in what Jack called combat readiness mode. Tommy recognized the look in her eyes. She was calculating, planning, preparing for violence she hoped wouldn't come. In the corner of the room, Lux lay on a thick cushioned mat that Jack had brought up from his office. The collar was finally off. Rebecca had managed to remove it that morning after 6 hours of nerve-wracking work, her hand steady despite the knowledge that one wrong move would kill them all. The collar now sat on a workbench across the room, disarmed but intact. Evidence. Lux looked better without it. The young Valari's fur shimmered brighter, the patterns flowing more freely across their body. But even without the translation program, Tommy could read the anxiety in those movements. They were surrounded by people who wanted to recapture them, maybe kill them to tie up loose ends. Safety was an illusion and they all knew it. How long before they make their move? Tommy asked. Jack set down his rifle and joined him at the monitors. If I were them, I'd wait until tonight. Full dark, maybe 2 or 3 in the morning when people are at their lowest. They'll use thermal imaging to track our positions inside the building, coordinate their entry points, try to overwhelm us before we can react. Standard tactical assault. We're not exactly soldiers, Tommy pointed out. We're a teacher, a machinist, a high school kid, and an injured alien. How are we supposed to fight off trained professionals? We're not, Rebecca said, turning from her monitor. We're not going to fight them. We're going to make it impossible for them to fight us. She walked to the workbench where Lux's collar sat and picked it up carefully. This thing has been broadcasting a tracking signal for days. But it's also got a power source that's unlike anything we have on Earth. The energy density is incredible. Jack and I have been running calculations, and if we could trigger a controlled discharge of this power cell, we could create an electromagnetic pulse. A big one. Tommy's eyes widened. An EMP would fry all their electronics. Their vehicles, their weapons systems, their communication equipment. Everything within about half a mile, Rebecca confirmed. Including our security system, our computers, and Tommy's translation program. The implication hit Tommy hard. Without the translation software, he couldn't understand Lux. They'd be reduced to basic gestures and guesswork. The connection they'd built over the past week would be severed. Lux stood up and crossed the room to where they were talking. The young Valari's fur pulsed with patterns that Tommy's program, still running on battery backup, translated on his laptop screen. Do it. Use collar. Stop them. Cannot let them take me again. Cannot let them hurt you. Worth the risk. But I won't be able to understand you anymore, Tommy said, his voice tight. Lux moved closer, pressing their warm body against Tommy's leg. The patterns that flowed across the Valari's fur were simple enough that no translation was needed. Comfort. Trust. Family. We've got another problem, Jack said, studying his monitors. Even if we knock out their electronics, they'll still come. They'll be angry, disoriented, but they'll have flashlights and guns that don't need computers to work. And they'll outnumber us significantly. Then we need backup, Rebecca said. Real backup that we can trust. Tommy's mind raced through possibilities, then landed on something that felt both crazy and completely obvious. The internet. We've been hiding this whole thing, trying to keep it secret so these people couldn't cover it up. But what if we do the opposite? What if we make it so public they can't cover it up? Rebecca and Jack both turned to look at him. Think about it, Tommy continued, his words coming faster as the idea took shape. We broadcast everything. The collar, all the data Lux has given us about their species, about the trafficking ring, about the attack on the diplomatic ship. We upload it everywhere, make it go viral before they can stop it. Once millions of people have seen it, once the whole world knows aliens are real, these traffickers lose their biggest advantage. They can't make us disappear quietly anymore. We'd be too visible. It would also mean exposing Earth to the galaxy decades before Lux's people intended, Rebecca pointed out. The Valari wanted to keep humanity hidden until we were ready. This would blow that plan completely. Lux's fur flickered with new patterns. The translation appeared on Tommy's screen, plan already destroyed. Traffickers know about Earth. They have connections that will spread information. Cannot stop that. Can only choose how humanity learns truth. In fear and secrecy? Or with hope and allies? Jack nodded slowly. The kid's got a point. We're already compromised. Might as well control the narrative. Can you set it up? Rebecca asked Jack. Upload that won't fail even if we're taken down? I've got a satellite uplink with redundant backups. Military-grade stuff I may have acquired through channels I'm not supposed to talk about. Set it up as a dead man's switch. If we don't check in every 12 hours, everything uploads automatically to every major platform I can reach. How long do you need? 2 hours to set it up properly. Another hour to record everything and package it. Rebecca looked at the monitors, at the vehicles maintaining their patient siege. Then we'd better get started. Because I don't think they're going to wait much longer. The next 3 hours were frantic preparation. Rebecca finished rigging the collar for EMP discharge while Jack set up his satellite uplink system, creating multiple backup protocols that would ensure their information reached the world no matter what happened to them. Tommy recorded everything with Lux, his translation program working overtime to capture the young Valari story in excruciating detail. They talked about the Valari species, their role as galactic peacekeepers. They documented the trafficking ring, the attack on the diplomatic vessel, the murder of Lux's family. They recorded technical specifications of the collar, evidence that the technology was beyond anything Earth had created. They made it undeniable, overwhelming, impossible to dismiss as a hoax. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the property, Tommy uploaded everything. His fingers trembled as he hit the final confirmation button, watching the progress bars fill as gigabytes of data streamed out to servers around the world. YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, WikiLeaks, every major news outlet he could find. It's done, he announced. No taking it back now. Jack checked his monitors and his expression hardened. And they know it. All 6 vehicles are moving. They're done waiting. Rebecca carried the modified collar up to the roof access, Jack covering her with his rifle. Tommy stayed with Lux in the control room, watching the vehicles advance on multiple screens. Rebecca's voice crackled over the radio. Triggering EMP in 3, 2, 1. The world went silent and dark. The darkness was absolute. Tommy had never experienced silence quite like this. The constant hum of electronics that had become background noise in modern life simply vanished, leaving a void that felt almost physical. He stood frozen in the control room, his useless phone clutched in one hand, surrounded by dead monitors and equipment that had become expensive paperweights in an instant. Outside, through the windows, he could see the traffickers' vehicles coasting to a stop, their engines dead, their lights extinguished. Flashlight beams began cutting through the gathering darkness like searchlights. Shouting voices carried on the evening air, confusion turning to anger turning to determination. They were coming on foot now. Jack appeared in the doorway, his rifle slung over his shoulder, carrying emergency glow sticks that cast everything in an eerie green light. Everybody downstairs. The ground floor has the fewest entry points. We make our stand there. Tommy helped Lux to their feet. Without the translation program, he couldn't understand the patterns flowing across the young Valari's fur, but he didn't need to. Fear was universal. So was determination. Lux stayed close to Tommy as they descended the stairs, moving carefully in the dim emergency lighting. Rebecca met them on the ground floor, her face streaked with sweat and dirt from the roof. EMP worked perfectly. Everything electronic within half a mile is fried. But we've got maybe 10 minutes before they breach the building. There are at least 12 of them that I counted. 12 armed professionals against 3 civilians and an injured alien, Jack said grimly. Not great odds. The first window shattered downstairs. Glass exploded inward, followed by a metal canister that began spewing thick smoke. More windows broke in rapid succession. The traffickers were using coordinated entry tactics, multiple breach points simultaneously to divide their attention. Jack moved to one doorway, Rebecca to another. Tommy crouched behind an overturned desk with Lux pressed against his side. He'd grabbed a heavy wrench from Jack's workbench, though he had no idea what he'd actually do with it if someone got close. His hands shook so badly he could barely grip the tool. This was really happening. In minutes, maybe seconds, people with guns were going to storm through those doors, and there was nothing Tommy could do to stop it. All his intelligence, all his problem-solving skills, they meant nothing against trained killers. A man appeared at the top of the stairs. Jack moved fast, using his rifle as a club, and the man went down hard. Another came through the smoke from a different direction. Rebecca intercepted him with a combination of movements Tommy couldn't follow, and suddenly that man was on the ground too. But there were too many. For every one they stopped, 2 more appeared. Then something changed. Tommy felt it before he saw it. A pressure in the air, a sensation like being underwater, like the atmosphere itself was holding its breath. The hair on his arms stood up. The temperature dropped suddenly, noticeably. Lux's fur exploded with light. Not patterns this time. Not communication. This was something primal, something raw and powerful that Tommy had never seen before. The young Valari threw back their head and released a sound that wasn't quite a howl, wasn't quite a song, but something that existed in the space between. It resonated in Tommy's chest, in his bones, in places he didn't know sound could reach. The building shook. The traffickers froze, confusion replacing tactical discipline. One of them, a man in tactical gear who'd been advancing on Rebecca, actually dropped his weapon and covered his ears. Through the windows Tommy saw light. Real light, impossibly bright, descending from the clouds like falling stars. Ships. They came down fast, 6 sleek vessels that made every aircraft Tommy had ever seen look clumsy and primitive. They moved with fluid grace, defying physics, surrounding the property in seconds. Their hulls shimmered with the same silver-blue light that covered Lux's fur. They were beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. One of the ships landed in the equipment yard with barely a sound, its hull opening like a flower. Figures emerged, and Tommy's brain struggled to process what he was seeing. More Valari, but larger, adult, moving with deadly purpose and intelligence that was immediately obvious even from a distance. They were magnificent. Wolf-like but more, their bodies covered in fur that shifted through colors Tommy had no names for. Some carried devices that might have been weapons. Others simply moved with the confidence of beings who didn't need weapons to be dangerous. The traffickers didn't stand a chance. Within seconds they were surrounded, their weapons taken, their tactical advantage completely nullified by beings whose technology was centuries ahead of anything humanity had achieved. It wasn't even a fight. It was over before Tommy could fully process what was happening. The largest Valari approached the building, and Tommy knew immediately this was someone important. The creature was massive, nearly the size of a horse, fur shimmering with gold and silver patterns that seemed to contain entire galaxies. Age and wisdom radiated from every movement. Lux burst through the door, moving faster than Tommy had seen them move since that first night in the warehouse. The young Valari crossed the distance to the large one in seconds, and they came together in what could only be described as an embrace. Their furs blazed together, patterns intertwining in ways too complex for human eyes to fully track. Grandmother, Tommy's mind supplied. This was family. Tears burned Tommy's eyes. He'd done it. Somehow, impossibly, he'd kept Lux alive long enough for rescue to come. A smaller Valari approached Tommy, Rebecca, and Jack. This one wore a device on their chest that glowed with soft light. When they spoke, the device translated in perfect English, the voice warm and professional. "You are Tommy Blake, the human who saved Lux." Tommy nodded, not trusting his voice. "I am Keeper Ven. I speak for Matriarch Cora, Lux's grandmother and leader of our diplomatic corps. You have done something remarkable, Tommy Blake. You saw past fear and difference to recognize a person in need. In Valari culture, this is the highest measure of true civilization. I just couldn't leave them there," Tommy managed. "Many would have. Many of your species already did." Ven's tone carried profound sadness. The traffickers who attacked Lux's family were human. The officials who protected them were human. Your species contains great darkness. But also great light, came another voice. The matriarch herself approached, Lux walking beside her. She was even more impressive up close, her presence filling the space in a way that had nothing to do with physical size. The device on her chest translated her words with weight and dignity. "These three humans risked everything to protect my grandchild. They faced criminals, corruption, death itself for a stranger. For someone not even of their world. This speaks to humanity's potential." She looked directly at Tommy, and he felt the weight of intelligence that had lived for longer than he could imagine. "Your world has been compromised, Tommy Blake. The treaty that protected Earth has been shattered. The traffickers have connections that span your planet and beyond. Others will learn of humanity's existence. Some will be curious. Some will be hungry. Earth was to have had decades more in hiding, time to grow, to mature, to prepare for the galaxy's harsh realities. What happens now?" Rebecca asked, her military training helping her find her voice faster than Tommy could. "Now we face a choice," Matriarch Cora said. "Standard protocol demands quarantine. We lock down your world, limit contact, keep you isolated until you're truly ready. But Lux has shared everything with me. Your internet, your global communication network. You have already told your own people. Billions of humans have seen the evidence by now." Tommy checked his dead phone uselessly, then remembered. Did it work? Did the video spread? Ven manipulated a holographic display that appeared in the air between them, showing data streams Tommy could barely comprehend. The phrase, "first contact," is trending on 27 platforms. Your videos have been viewed over 600 million times in 3 hours. World governments are in emergency sessions. Your entire species is in chaos. Chaos can become catastrophe, Matriarch Cora continued. Or it can become opportunity. Humanity knows they are not alone. How you respond to this knowledge will determine everything that comes next. She turned specifically to Tommy. You are young by any species measure. But you have shown wisdom that many adults lack. Lux wishes to remain on Earth as a teacher and ambassador. They believe in your species because of what you showed them. But this role requires human partners. People who can bridge both worlds, who understand that intelligence and worth are not limited to familiar forms. Tommy's eyes widened. You want me to be some kind of diplomat? More than diplomat. Teacher. Student. Bridge between worlds. You will learn our ways and teach us yours. You will stand between your people and a galaxy that is beautiful, dangerous, and infinitely complex. He's 16, Rebecca interrupted. He has school, family, a whole life ahead of him that doesn't involve intergalactic politics. He has a gift that cannot be taught, the matriarch replied. The ability to see past surface to soul, to recognize personhood in unfamiliar forms. This is rare. This is precious. This is exactly what humanity needs as you take your first steps into a larger universe. Tommy looked at Lux. The young Valari's fur pulsed with patterns he couldn't translate anymore, but he understood anyway. Oh, trust, please. I'll do it, Tommy heard himself say. But not alone. Rebecca and Jack too. You need different perspectives, different skills, different experiences. And I need people I trust. The matriarch's fur rippled with what might have been approval or amusement. You negotiate already. Very well. Rebecca Hall. Jack Martinez. Will you join this endeavor? Rebecca and Jack exchanged glances. A whole conversation seemed to pass between them in that look. Someone's got to keep the kid alive, Jack finally said. And make sure humanity doesn't embarrass itself too badly, Rebecca added. But we do this transparently. No shadow governments, no secret agreements. If Earth is joining the galactic community, we do it honestly and openly. Agreed, Matriarch Cora said. Transparency. Honesty. These are principles my people hold sacred. Over the next hours, as dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, the world watched history unfold in real time. Valari ships landed at designated coordinates across the globe. The matriarch addressed the United Nations via holographic projection, her translated words broadcast on every channel, every platform, every device still functioning after the EMP. Humanity, she said, her voice reaching billions simultaneously. You are children no longer. You have been revealed to a galaxy filled with wonders and terrors beyond your imagination. The Valari offer protection, knowledge, friendship. But we cannot walk this path for you. You must choose your own way forward, together as one species united. Tommy stood on the roof of Jack's building, Lux beside him, watching the sunrise. His phone, recharged with Valari technology, buzzed constantly. Messages from people he'd never met, reporters wanting interviews, government officials demanding briefings. The world wanted answers, wanted reassurance, wanted to know what came next. He had no idea. But for the first time in his life, Tommy Blake didn't feel like an outsider looking in. He felt like exactly the right person in exactly the right place. We did it, he said to Lux. We actually did it. Lux pressed against his side, and even without translation, Tommy knew what they were saying. Together. Always. The stars were still visible in the morning sky, fading slowly as the sun rose. But they'd never look the same again. Each one was a possibility now, a potential friend or enemy or something in between. Humanity's childhood was over. The universe waited, vast and terrifying and full of promise. And it all started because one lonely kid chose compassion over fear, chose to see a person where others saw only a monster. Sometimes Tommy thought that's all it takes to change everything.